All right, what is up, my friends? Welcome to a complete set review. We just did one of these for Crimson Vow, right? Well, kind of a big surprise. This is like literally a week ago we found out about this. A new set called Alchemy, which is going to be an MTG Arena only set, and quite the bombshell. A lot of things going on in Alchemy. It is going to be a new format, essentially kind of parallel to Standard, where it's going to be all the sets that are legal in Standard, plus a special supplemental set of Alchemy cards that are made specifically for Arena with digital-only mechanics. And they're going to rebalance cards in Standard they think are a little bit off the mark. So Alrund's Bethany, for example, a bada bing, bada boom, you start here and you end up here. We're going to get to that as we go on. Before I start with the set review, as always, we're going to do the entire set, every card. A lot of rares, not a lot of commons here. This is not meant for limited. This is mostly just, it's like 65 cards, all for constructive for the most part, so it should be a shorter set review and a little more concise. We're also going to go over the rebalanced cards as well. I want to talk really, really fast about Alchemy. Before we get started here, pretty contentious announcement. I was on vacation last week in Disney World. I was actually sitting in Disney, eating my lunch, watching the announcement on my phone, and a lot of pushback on this. Now, so real fast, I wanted to go over it, kind of elephant in the room. Let's just address it. I think there's a lot of really cool things about Alchemy. I think that the idea of using the digital space is awesome. I love the digital-only cards they released for Historic. I think they're super, super cool. I love the idea of Arena kind of exploring that element of the game and allowing it to be kind of open-ended and try new things as far as design space goes. I love the idea of Historic being this kind of crazy online format that's like this mixture of cards and these digital cards. That's really, really cool. But now we see it coming in and infringing on Standard. Now, Standard hasn't been super great in the last few years. But, it's still one of the main core formats of Magic. And I can't see how Standard will coexist with Alchemy on Arena. I'm not really sure yet. I don't know. And there's big picture implications here of, like, if people stop playing Standard and only play Alchemy and only play, like Modern and Commander and Paper, what happens to Paper Magic as far as, like, new sets coming out? A lot of issues there. A lot of gray area I am also concerned about, too. But I'm pretty excited, honestly. A lot of cool things happening here. I think the rebalancing thing is pretty cool. A lot of really awesome potential in this if it's done right, which is really, really cool. The one thing that sucks completely, non-negotiably, is the economy on Arena is freaking awful. It's been awful, and Alchemy just hammers that home. It's almost all rares and mythics. The cards are going to be hard to get. It's a wild card sink. You don't get any wild cards back when they re-up or down a rare, which can change the format a lot. So absolutely abysmal economy, and just really, really just like grinding home how terrible the economy in Arena is right now. For me, I'm a content creator. I'm going to buy all the cards anyway, 'cause it's what I do. But for your average player, just awful. So shame on Wizards for that. Please fix the economy. Absolutely. I am a little worried about how this affects Paper as far as Standard existing as a format and so on and so forth. I do love Standard. I think without Standard and like a need for new cards, things get really, really weird. Is if you're only printing cards for Modern and Commander, why even print cards at all? Why have limited? It's a lot of big Pandora's box questions. But again, this is an alternate format on Magic Arena. You don't have to play in theory. So there's pluses and minuses for sure. I'm very excited for the potential of it. I am also worried about some of the other aspects that are a little more scary, but gonna get that all the way. That's my feelings on that. I'm excited to play Magic. I'm excited to try out new things, obviously. And again, I'm all about this using the digital space as a playground, which is super, super cool. So that being said, let's get started. So we're gonna jump in. A little bit different than usual. Usually I do all the colors. We're going to do white, blue, black, red, green, and all the multi-colored cards and stuff. But we're going to start off this set review with the rebalanced cards. There are 11 cards currently in Standard that are being rebalanced. Now, we see this in other digital games, but obviously in Magic you can't really do this because I own a card called Teferi Time Raveler, and you can't change the words on it. It's a piece of cardboard. It's been printed already. It's done. It's there. All right, so in Magic, they ban cards rarely if necessary, and cards just are what they are. So now in Alchemy, only in this format and in Historic, so the two digital formats, they're going to go in and just edit cards. Like in StarCraft, for example, if the Battlecruiser is too good, they'll remove 20 hit points off of it, or make it a little slower, or whatever it is to kind of have this live dynamic game to balance it. We see this in all online games. And now they have the freedom to do this with cards in standard that have problems. So a problem like Alwyn's Bethany, obviously the card that everyone's surprised hasn't been banned yet. And, you know, super powerful card, very obnoxious card to play against. I don't need to tell you why this card's super, super annoying. So we got our first rebalance here, and Alwyn's Bethany turns into Alwyn's Bethany. With a little A on it to denote that this is a rebalanced version of the card. So differences here. The foretell cost has gone up by 1. It is now 5. And most importantly, you only get the birds if you foretell the cards. This is huge because A, it means you need to actually foretell it first and spend more mana on it. And B, you can't copy it anymore. If you copy it, you won't get the extra tokens. So what makes Alwyn's Epiphany so stupid is it's a time walk with a threat already built in. The limiting factor on time walks was always that you needed to have something in play or it was a 5-mana explore. And this kind of fixed that. So +1 to the foretell cost, and now must be foretold to get the birds. This significantly hampers the effectiveness of this card. We can't copy it with Galvanic Iteration now. Is the card still playable? Probably. That's kind of the weird thing here, though, is that, like, where's the line, you know? We're used to Magic cards just being good. It just is what it is, you know? And there's not a flat power level in Magic. You know, there are really good cards, or cards are not as good, cards situationally good, draft commons, etc., etc. But the goal of nerfing and buffing up stuff is to try and get everything on a flat power level. So the question is, when you nerf a card, is it still playable? Is this card still playable? I think so. But it's a pretty significant downside. I mean, I think this really, really hurts all of the pure Epiphany decks. They're really more toxic, like, I'm going to copy Epiphany twice and do whatever. Is not nearly as good. Although getting multiple turns is still good, the threats aren't going to be there, which is definitely a thing too. So I don't know exactly how much it's going to affect the Epiphany decks. It's definitely a nerf. Happy to see it. Would like to see it banned in regular standard. That's all in Epiphany. We're going to move on to our next card here. Innistrad Chariot. The second best card in the format, for sure. Just a very, very powerful mid-range cards. Unbelievable rate. Super powerful card, mostly held in check by Epiphany. And we're going to see a rebalance here of changing the card now to only produce 1 cat token. And now it crews for only 2. So functionally the same, except now there's just 1 token instead of 2. That's pretty cool because it makes the card more easily assailable by removal spells, because it felt really awful where they put a Chariot, they crew it, and you Doomblade it. They still have 4 power in play across 2 bodies. So as far as like raw rate goes and like a mid-range sort of way of doing things, just an unbelievably powerful card. So now the card's a little more fair, only makes 2/2, so is the copying effect, still playable with Ren and 7 and stuff like that. Is this card still playable? I'm not sure, honestly. It's not nearly as good on rate, and decks playing Esika's Chariot weren't exactly like Esika's Chariot decks. They were just playing the good card on rate. So that being said, not sure if it's still good enough. That's kind of the thing. Like, if this card just has been nerfed, isn't playable anymore, like, is that worse or better than banning it? I don't know, honestly. We're in totally uncharted waters here. Totally uncharted waters. So Esika's Chariot, though, it is a very, very elegant fix, though. I like this fix a lot. I think it would have been better off for Magic if the card had been printed like this originally. I think it's to fix that now, but we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. It is true that Prismari commands now a straight 1-shot on Chariot, which is kind of cool. So pretty cool. Our next card is Faceless Haven, and the dominance in standard right now has been Epiphany decks and then monocolored aggro decks, and a lot of that has to do with Faceless Haven. Very similar to how Mutavault was so important in the previous formats where that was legal. And we see a little bit of a nerf here to Faceless Haven, dropping it down from a 4/3 to a 3/3. So it's not as fast of a clock. Still a very powerful card. I like this one too, honestly. You know, is the card still playable? Yeah. But maybe you're playing like 2 or 3 now, rather than playing 4, 3 or 4. And it also makes it so if you want to play an aggressive deck, you don't feel inclined to only play monocolored. You can try and branch out into different colors. I like this. It's a good fix. I think it's still good. Again, these are kind of just like clean, elegant fixes that like probably should have been hit initially in play design, but designing Magic cards is hard. You know, it's hard to know where the knob should be. So I like this one a lot. Up next is Goldspan Dragon. Again, one of the most powerful cards in the format. And we see a removal of the effect that allows you to make a treasure when it's targeted. So 2 important things here. Now it only makes treasure when it attacks. Now this is important for 2 reasons. One, it's much worse against removal now, because part of the thing was you play Goldspan Dragon, they try and Doomblade it, you make a treasure, and then negate the Doomblade attack anyway, which is insane. That's a big thing. Also, now you can't go nuts on your own dragon. So there were multiple decks in Standard and Historic that focused on targeting their own dragon for value. So I play a pump spell on it, I get an extra mana. I play a pump spell on it, get an extra mana. Kind of do this cool thing. Or there are mutate decks where you mutate onto it and make mana, kind of loop combos like that, which is pretty cool. And those are all gone now. And one of the complaints about this set and doing it like this with the nerfs is these nerfs are also now legal like this in Historic. So if I had a Goldspan Dragon mutate deck in Historic, it doesn't work anymore. And that kind of sucks. I do agree with that for sure. I'm not sure if that's the right or wrong thing to do, but I don't know. We'll see. It's now a much more fair card in Standard. Definitely no longer nearly as good in blue decks because you can't immediately defend it with a counterspell. However, it is still obviously a powerful threat in mid-range decks. So I would say a little worse in blue decks, a little better in mid-range decks. Still a powerful card, but definitely a bit of a tune down on one of the most powerful cards in the format. Up next is Luminar Aspirant, and
inconceivable.
I'm not super sure with this one. So we see obviously a very played card. He's playing Legacy. It's a good card, but I don't think his card is particularly incredible or anything. More so that just mono white was just really, really good in Standard due to other various reasons as well. And we see the nerf here where the counter now goes on your end step rather than in combat. So it's a little bit of a slight nerf where now you get the counters kind of like on a turn delay, essentially, as far as attacking goes. Makes the card worse, for sure. Still pretty good. I don't know if it's necessary, honestly. I mean, like, again, part of the thing is, like, there are just going to be good cards in the format, and that's never going to change. There will always be good cards. There will always be a best card in the format. But tune down Luminarch a little bit. And again, this is for all you Historic players out there who have, Selesnya humans in Historic. Again, I feel for you. I'm not sure exactly how I feel about this as far as Historic goes, but it is what it is, and there it is. So Aspirant getting a little bit of a nerf here. Now we're going to move on to Omnath. Now Omnath, of course, is busted card, banned in Historic, banned in Standard. Sees a lot of play in Modern, which is obviously a very powerful format, and just a ridiculous card as far as it draws a card. Does basically everything. So Omnath gets a whole bunch of stuff happening to it. They added a mana to the cost. So now it is a 5 mana card rather than a 4 mana card. A really inelegant mana cost of blue, white, green, red, 1. And it also loses the ability to draw a card when it comes into play. Now it only scries 1. And it's funny because, like, scrying 1, while drawing cards is insanely good, scrying 1 is almost a drawback because the trigger allows your opponent to kill it before you can make a land drop. And that's kind of what it felt like the balancing act was on the card draw trigger. But the card draw trigger was just way too good. So definitely a much worse version of Omnath, but Omnath's just really, really good. There's still Storm the Festival available as far as getting this for landfall stuff. There are still landfall stuff in general in the format, Lotus Cobra and friends. So look what they did to my boy. Yeah, but still probably a playable card, which just goes to show how busted the original version of Omnath was. And I assume we'll see this unbanned in Historic, and we'll see this version in Historic as well. And it is kind of cool to be able to play with your card again. It's a little weird and elegant because, like, Omnath's still in Modern, and we're going to play with the Omnath in Modern. I don't know. It's a little jarring in that respect, but now we can play with Omnath in Historic. It's just not going to be as broken as it was. So, reasonable fix, I think. Pretty strong fix. I'd be surprised if this card is going to be dominant in any format, but we'll see. We'll see. Now we go on to the other side of things, and this is where things also are a little murky. The buffs. So, of course, same thing, I use back to the StarCraft analogy. Nobody is using carriers for whatever reason, because they're just not a part of the metagame. You can buff them. Make it so the build time's a little faster. Make it so they have a little bit more life. They do a little more damage, whatever it is. Now, that's a little weird magic because roughly, 5 to 10% of cards are playable and constructed. Maybe less than that. Maybe say 5%. Say 5% of cards are playable and constructed. The other cards are all limited cards, and they're all cards that aren't good enough. There are tons of cards that aren't good enough and constructed. So kind of nebulous, which ones do you buff? You could buff all of them, honestly. And again, as I said, Magic power level isn't really the flat line. It's a very, very, it's a real scale. So they said they're going to pick out the cards that are very, very popular but aren't quite there. So our first one here is Cosmos Elixir. Kind of a cool card, 4-mana artifact, and it gets the little slight buff of now on your end step, if you don't draw the card, you gain 2 life and get to scry 1. So a little bit bonus. Kind of a cute little nerf. You know, again, the complexity creep here is definitely a thing. You know, you could do this to every card, make every card just a little bit better, a little better, a little better here and there. But now you're really confusing things a little bit. So there's definitely an element of confusion here for sure. And it's kind of nebulous as well as far as like, well, why not make every card better kind of thing. But we'll see. Kind of a cool card. I don't know. We'll see. Next card is Demilich. Blue, Skeleton Wizard. He's playing Modern. Sees a tiny bit of play in Standard. There was a really cool mono blue deck I played at some point. I think Strosky built it. And the buff here is very, very simple. From a 4/3 to a 4/4. And that fourth top, this is pretty big. It is pretty big as far as surviving removal spells. You know, now it survives things like Scorch of Dragonfire or whatever the current variant of that is. You know, Frostbite, etc., etc. Powerful card. Very cool, very fun, cool build around. Just a little buff. You know, kind of a cool card. Want to see people build around it. Yeah, it's cool, I guess. It's a cool card. Now it's a little better. Druid Glass, kind of a weird one here. It's an uncommon from D&D set. Not a great card. It's okay and limited. You know, just kind of a weird card. And the buff here is very simple. Level 3 goes from costing 5 mana to costing 3 mana. And is this card playable now? I don't think so. Honestly, and again, a weird, like, nebulous, like, what cards do we buff kind of thing. I don't know. Kind of a weird one. It's better now, you know, and it's kind of cool. But, again, this is a little different than in, like, StarCraft, where there only are so many units, because in Magic there are thousands of cards, you know. So which ones do you buff? Which ones do you don't buff? I don't know. We'll see how it works. And, again, I sort of like that they're trying this. I don't necessarily agree with every part of it. But I really like the idea of just trying things. You know, if it doesn't work, if it sucks, whatever. Fix it, put it back the way it was. No one's worse for wear, you know, so whatever, sure. We have Wizard Glass, same thing, kind of just a weird, uncommon, not super playable. No max hand size, draw 2 cards. Same idea. The level 3 goes from being 5 mana to 3 mana. Is that good in constructed? I don't think so, but I guess, sure. That's fine, I guess. And then we see Philat, the World Sculptor, big legendary card from Zendikar. I played this card before. What do you mean this card's not good? I played this card before. What do you mean it's not good enough? So Philat gets a little bit of a buff here. Philat itself gets Trample. And they added an end-of-turn Trample effect to the trigger on landfalls. You put the counters on a creature, and that creature gets Trample. That makes this card much, much better. Because Philat is pretty good at making like a big dumb plant. You'd have this like 8-9 plant in play, but they just chump it. So giving the plant Trample is a huge game. Giving Philat Trample itself is also pretty big. So this is a huge buff to this card. You know, this card goes from being like, you know, a 6.5 to like a 7.5 or an 8 pretty quick. Is there a deck that wants it? I don't know. You know, maybe yes, maybe no. You know, landfall is definitely a thing. You know, kind of pushes the mechanic of this. And the thing is that sort of like a scientist changing too many variables at once, it's going to be a little weird because not only are we changing these cards, but we're also adding about 65 new cards as well. And they're all like constructed rares. They're not like, you know, middling limited cards too. So the format would have changed a lot with or without these nerfs and buffs. And now they're also doing some nerfs and buffs too. It's going to be hard to know, chicken and the egg, what's going to affect what. You know, did the buffs make this card playable, or did the other cards make this card playable or unplayable, vice versa, et cetera, et cetera. So pretty wild, adventure we're going on here. Again, very happy they're trying new things. Will some work? Will some not work? I'm not really sure yet. This is totally uncharted ground. The one thing I would say is keep the attitude positive. You know, Magic players love to clutch their pearls. They love it. They love to clutch those pearls, you know? And a lot of the times, it usually is better for the game. A lot of the times. Not always, you know, new card face or, you know, getting rid of damage on a stack, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a new thing. Go with open mind, try it out. Look forward to building decks with this. But that's this section of a set reviews. The rest of the sections are going to be just the cards in a set: white, blue, black, red, green, and then all the multicolored cards, land cards, and colorless cards together as well. So anything missed will be on YouTube, of course. Check it out on YouTube. Again, I'm Jim Davis. Complete set review for Alchemy on Arena. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. White is coming up. All the new cards are coming up. And let's go.